The JonTopofIt show with John Meisberg. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host, John Meisberg, and today we have in the studio Psymin Cisneros. Am I saying that right?
Cisneros.
Cisneros. Oh.
See? You got it.
Got it.
Good job.
She is a progressive activist and a whole lot more.
Wow, quite the... Thanks.
Simon, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I love the way your name is spelled. It's really unique.
Thank you. You could also just call me Psy if that's easier.
Ooh, I like that.
Like the Korean singer, Gangnam Style.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or like psychological.
Yes, I say Psy as in like psychology, and people don't know how to they're like, oh. And I'm like, but psychology?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it just doesn't. People are not used to hearing like Psy. I've only heard Psy from the Gangnam Style.
Yeah.
Never heard it.
Oh. And I asked her to wear a mask today because of COVID, and she showed up with this great Apple mask. And she says that this isn't what it actually is, but I thought it was representative of a few bad apples, like maybe in reference to the police.
Yeah, the police and the whole tree that upholds racism. I think what people get wrong is that we see racism as it's isolated to a few bad individuals, a few bad apples, but we're all responsible for upholding the system that racism can thrive. And one of those things is I think white people get wrong is that we're just different from... Oof.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, I'm fine? Okay,
Just
cool.
don't hold it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. COVID, that's right.
Oh, no, more because of the sound. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, cool. So, white privilege.
First of all, show everyone, turn this way to see the other apple. Can you see that? It's got a mustache.
Wait.
That one. Yeah, that's pretty good. Isn't the idea though, if there are 5 bad police officers in a room of 100, but the other 95 don't flip on them, then they're all kind of bad apples.
Yeah, exactly. Which is arguably worse than the people who are malicious about it. Because if you say nothing, do nothing, then you mean nothing.
Yeah. It's
a choice. People are like, oh, I'm not going to participate, but you don't hold other people accountable. That's also an issue.
Yeah. So we have a whole section that we're going to talk about Black rights and the involvement of police brutality. But I wanted to start off this interview by just talking in general about 2020 and how it's been a crazy year. I think because of everything that's been going on, that America has some Americans have become kind of disengaged and apathetic to what's been going on, maybe for their own mental sanity. And I think that when people are disengaged, they become uninformed. If they become uninformed, things are less likely to get better because people are just they don't even know what to change. And so how do you think we can, as a country, reverse that trend that's been happening where people are starting to tune out? How do we get people to be motivated to want to get involved in, say, politics on a local level that would promote progressive change? What do you think about that?
Education, educating ourselves and trying to educate other people, both of us being white, especially other white people who might or might not be on the Black Lives Matter movement, because some people they only know what the media posts, they just show the riots or the looting or whatever, but there's more to it than that. We have to ask why are people so poor that they're doing this? Because they're not doing it because they want to. No one wants to no one wants to sleep on the street, and no one wants to do any of that, any of these bad things that we see as criminal. Say someone steals, I don't know, bread. I feel that's very who's stealing bread? But why do people steal? why do people resort to these things? Like, and why is it that we don't have to necessarily resort to those things to survive, you know? Because it's all about survival. Like, they're just trying to survive like the rest of us. Like, we work, you know, we eat, we go to college or whatever else to survive. We're working towards that American dream, right? But we also have a privilege to be able to do so, being white, and being able to not be perceived as criminal or being discriminated against for being brown or black.
So how would you say that ties into getting people to want to be like motivated to get more involved in local elections?
Well, we should recruit other white people who would be on the same page, or either try to like, you know, like maybe take Angela Davis's words and like try to convey them to people coming from us, because other white people would rather hear from other white people, right? Like,
Maybe.
well,
I think maybe we have a bias for like listening
yeah,
to people that look more like us.
an unconscious bias.
Yeah.
You know, not like that we want to, but that's just like the system that's in place, the society that we have made. The path of least resistance, I recently read in my gender studies class. That's like kind of what helps uphold everything, because if we say nothing, you know, there's no social resistance. But if we do say something, then things might change, or maybe people will start asking themselves questions like, is what I'm doing right? Is it wrong? Or why do I do these things? Why do other people do these things? Like, we have to ask these questions. We have to question ourselves more than we question other people, you know, because we're part of it, even if we choose to participate or not, because we are, you know, it's a system. The tree, bad apples.
Yeah.
Like, but if you mean like
I'm just
recruiting people, right?
No, I think that like okay, like there's a lot of people in the city that like say Seattle that maybe have become so jaded and disheartened with how our local government has responded to certain things, that they just think things aren't going to get better. And instead of wanting to get involved themselves and try to change it, they've just totally disengaged and stopped like paying attention. And so I think like, how do you get that motivation back? Like, I have a lot of friends that I think they don't think that maybe their voice is heard, or maybe that anyone cares. But my understanding is that local elections matter more than federal elections. But for some reason, people only seem to care about who's the president. But then like people aren't paying attention to like what's happening in their own city and wanting maybe to get more involved in, I saw this article from the ice cream company Ben and Jerry's. Apparently, they're like super active politically, and I wonder if I could pull it up.
Yes, please.
But let me see. I think it was like why local elections matter or something like that. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Why local races matter more than ever. Check this out. So like I think the gist of it was this right here. That a good portion of our local taxes goes to fund education and school boards, and we have a big say on how that money is spent. And like education impacts like how people think. That's a big part. It says if you're tired of driving into potholes on your commute to work and you start to wonder why you can't take a bus or a train, like we're blessed in Seattle, we have great infrastructure, but like some cities, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, where like they barely had a bus system, and even if you took it, it was like sketchy. Like it was like, I don't know, it wasn't very great. But then I think like a topic we're going to get into, it says local prosecutors are the single most powerful people in the criminal justice system when it comes to deciding who goes to jail or prison and who doesn't. And it's like we care so much about how like SPD is treating people, specifically people of color, in a way that's fair. And one of the best ways that we as citizens of the city can ensure that that happens is by being more involved on a local level in our government to see like where our taxes go, what we're paying for, what we're giving up, and prioritizing that so that we're funding the right activities and not and making sure and holding police officers accountable when something is done that we don't think is just right. So I don't know. I just thought that this whole concept of caring more about a local elections were important.
Absolutely. It
But
all matters.
yeah. So, but I think that when it comes to like motivating people to want to be more involved on a local level, like what would you say to those people that don't feel very motivated? They feel disengaged.
Well, our Seattle would be way better if more people were engaged in it, because then, I think that we could really see some progressive change.
Yeah.
Because, like, at CHOP, you would see people, the black activists working day in and day out, like, on marches or speeches. And, like, I heard there's a bit of division in there, but they all wanted the same thing, Black and brown people just want to be able to safely, just thrive like we do. So in order to get people on board, I think CHOP was a good idea, because a lot of people that I don't think were really into politics or whatever, like, went and just wanted to see what was going on. Like, they went, and then there's people making food. They're giving out free food at CHOP. And, like, they were painting murals all over, like that giant Black Lives Matter mural. And that was just, like, so cool to see. Their kids, families, everybody went. And I think that was just so important to see. I think having stuff like that, like a community outreach of some sort, which I feel like I'm sure Seattle has, but I haven't really heard about them. I have to, like, do my own research. Like, I think if we, reached out to our communities more and, like, help people that lived here, it would be better off. Like, local elections is a good one. I'll be honest. I just got that giant booklet, that talks about the people that are up for a vote. I didn't read all of it, but I feel like I'm trying to get myself to read it, because I think we all could benefit from knowing, like, who we are voting for, or who are going into state government, because then we would have people that represent us. Because right now I feel like we have people that only represent a few, like the privileged people in Seattle, which is, not enough. There's a lot of people here. And it's important that we represent all of them, because they live
equal
here,
representation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is so important. Like, the city would be so much better. I mean, the city thrives because we have so much diversity here, and it's like with COVID, I'm seeing a lot of, like, mom and pop shops close down, and it's just like, we need those people, because they help this city, like, thrive, like, but what would be great is to, like, help these people maybe that are having issues, like, those small mom and pop shops that might need, like, some funding to, like, survive, kind of like how airlines are getting bailouts. Like, so the state could help, could reach out to us and not just, like, ask us to vote for who we want. Like, we need people that reach out to communities and be like, what do you need from us? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And listening to Black and brown folks.
So it sounds like, to summarize a little bit, is like people's voice does matter, and the more examples you can give them that their voice matters, the more they would be engaged and motivated to want to participate more in local elections in some capacity. What would you say to people that are motivated, but they don't really know how to get started? Like, what are some ways from your perspective of how they could promote progressive change in their own communities or get involved in local politics? Like, I guess there's obvious ones, like register to vote and learn about the elections and the candidates, and maybe get your news from multiple sources so you don't only think about someone based on what Fox News tells you to think, or I guess you could, like, volunteer in some way, but like, what do you think?
I think one way to start is to maybe, like, start out helping, like, say, our own neighborhoods. Like, say I live in the U district, I, like, go there maybe to the UW's like, what can I do to help out my community? What can I do to help the students or, my neighbors that live here?
Mm-hmm. To start at a super like micro level.
And then maybe like work to like build up to work with other people in the surrounding community. Because I feel like if, there's like, I feel like you need like the groups that kind of lead up to like, then we would be more represented because everybody's working together,
Mm-hmm.
But that like, I know that's easier said than done, but I truly believe we can do it because Seattle seems like we want progressive change. A lot of people here want progressive change. There's not enough work being done because, we're here now.
Yeah. So more work needs to be done, but what kind of work do you think needs to happen? It's just more conversations in your community that can like spark more conversations until there's like a cultural change, or what do you think?
Yeah, like just be willing to talk to people about this and maybe like I know some people feel uncomfortable talking about these things, but the reality is some things are just, not going to be comfortable talking about. And being comfortable is just you can't always be comfortable in your life, So that's just kind of like so
It's almost like an indicator that it's important to talk about when it's not comfortable to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because then if, you do nothing, say nothing, then you mean nothing, kind of you just. But if you talk about it, then maybe things might happen because then you have this idea in your head and then you just build up on that, maybe.
Yeah. Well, the first step is like self-awareness and
Yes.
having the conversation. I just wanted to throw this out here since we're like less than 30 days out from the election. There's this great website called turbovote.org, which will help you get started with making sure that you're registered to vote, not just for president, but on a local level. So you can get started with making sure you get a ballot and you can research candidates and try to be more involved in local elections. And I also saw this other website called mobilize.us, which helps you be more informed on like events that are near you, that you can get more involved in campaigns on a local level if you want to do, help support a candidate that you've done research for that you believe in. So,
yes, do the work, white people, please.
So we both live in Seattle, and we both got to see firsthand what was going on at the Capitol Hill occupational protest, or CHOP, or it used to be called Chaz, or someone called it Chaz, and that kind of like took off. But the official name, I guess, is CHOP. And we both had opportunities to attend and be a part of the protests. Well, tell me about your experience of what it was like for you being there.
Well, I remember I was like, oh my gosh, I've never been to a protest before, but this is so important, So I went and I had a giant Black Lives Matter sign. And when we went there, we went to that area where they were standing off with the police, And I just remember looking at that and I'm like, wow, there's so many people. And then, I don't know, I felt comfortable. And then, nothing was happening, people were just protesting, like shouting, but not in a, but I mean, the cops don't hear us out anyway. They don't care, it's their job. But my experience at CHOP, I enjoyed the free snacks that they were giving out. That's not the only thing, but I had to mention that I love food. By the way, I love food. But I was also really poor at that time because they took like 4 months to pay me my unemployment. So I was poor for 4 months.
The federal government, yeah.
Yeah, it was a bummer, but I mean, it was nice that they were giving out food. Like, this is also to people that might not have a home, or maybe they're starving too.
Yeah. Yeah. You've mentioned to me that CHOP was very misrepresented in not only national news media, but even in our own local news stations. Can you explain to me, like, what do you mean by that? By the way, I totally agree with you. I saw the interviews on TV, and I really feel like it's almost like they pick a narrative. Like, they already know what they they already know what they want people to think about it, and they work backwards to try to like fill in the gaps of how to make you think that way, right? It doesn't matter if it's true.
Yeah, I I keep remembering these times where the cops were just infiltrate shop. I swear, but
Oh, you think they were like undercover pretending to be protesters?
I like my friends would tell me when I was not there. They would tell me that like guys would come in and just like try to start shit, and no one wants like the cops to be called or for them to like have any reason to shut us down or whatever. So we people would have to like peacefully bring someone away from Cal Anderson, but then they would just keep coming back, and then there was like no reason to come back. Like they kept getting thrown out, but it was probably undercover police. I mean, what else are they going to do when they're not working, right? Police on their own time.
Yeah. So how would you say that the media misrepresented the movement
Oh,
or the area itself? I think one of the things that stands out to me is they were saying that there were protesters that were going to the local businesses in the area and like making them pay them to not like to protect their business or something like that. Like did you hear about that? But I don't think there's any truth to that.
Was that from that one article from Fox News that happened to be like
Probably.
they photoshopped this one guy with a gun into like every single picture, and they're like, "This is Trump. It's on fire, and there's like a lot of havoc." And it's like, but that's not what's happening. And a lot of us are there, and none of that that's not happening.
Yeah.
But it, of course, the media would portray the police in a good light, right? Because we call them when something bad happens, But like other people will use that to just kind of discriminate against black and brown folks. But anyways, to my point.
Wait, here's the post in question that you were talking about.
Oh, you found it.
Yeah. So like this was like the entrance right here to one area, and then Fox News photoshopped this guy
Yes, that's
into the shot to make it look like it's like I don't remember seeing anyone with a gun there. And I went like 6 or 7 times. And then they put the same guy over here.
Yeah,
they're trying to make it seem more like scary than I think it actually was. And then I remember my parents calling me and being like, "Don't go down there. They got armed militia. they're checking you to see if you're allowed in." I'm like, "No, they're not." And they're like, and they're harassing all the businesses, making them give the money. I'm like, who is? I'm like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff coming out that was kind of fabricated to scare people about the idea of perhaps we could exist in an autonomous way without the police.
Yeah, actually, when I was in Arizona a few months ago, like a little bit, like a couple months after CHOP was like assembled or whatever, there was this guy that was taking me to the airport, and he asked like, "Oh, so you're from Seattle? How is that? I heard it's really bad over there. A lot of protests and looting." And I was just like, "That's actually not really that's not happening, dude."
I mean, or if it was happening maybe in a very like isolated way in one area for a very specific time, but it's like people talk about it like it's the whole city all the time.
Yeah,
like the whole place is burning down. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember like, but it's actually the cops doing all that stuff. Did you know that? He's like, "Oh." I was like, yeah, the media's portraying it in a horrible light, but it's really not bad. They're just, that helps them, but not us.
Well, to be fair, I think like I do remember after the George Floyd incident, things were really bad downtown Seattle.
Yeah, they
like
were.
I remember seeing lots of people breaking cars and throwing, just breaking cars and windows and looting. And I don't think it would be a fair statement to say that the police were doing those things, but I think that you could argue that the police antagonize protesters to kind of escalate the situation. And one of the things that I think that people want to see from our law enforcement officers is to encourage de-escalation of situations, to make sure everyone is safe, but like don't try to kick an ant pile. Like don't try to make people upset to where it's like it becomes this whole he said she said, like the protesters did this. Well, it's only because the police officers did this first, right? And it's like, I don't know. I think the police could do a better job of de-escalating the situation. And I feel like it's almost like in their training to escalate it. I don't know.
I think it is.
Remember when they grabbed that pink umbrella?
Yeah, like that was like I think I was there, but then I left right before that happened because then they used tear gas on everybody after they had like a little scuffle with pink umbrella. Yo, like they even had like after that incident, they had shields with the pink umbrella spray painted onto it. It was pretty dope. But like, I also think that, like, oh, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, see that? So like this was like, I mean, obviously it's not a peaceful situation. The protesters are pissed and the police officers are like meeting them in the middle, but there was no like acts of violence or anything. And then one of the police officers grabbed this umbrella and then they maced like everyone in the whole crowd.
Yeah, like what? Like it was totally the cops. Like,
well, I mean, if you want to say who started it, it looks like the police started it there.
Absolutely. I mean, look, they got riot gear and nobody has any of that. They maybe have helmets, but like, you know.
What was that chant they were saying down there a lot? Oh, take off your riot gear. We don't see no riot here.
Take off your riot gear. We don't see a riot here.
So I think, yeah, it just feels like, I feel like most people would objectively say there's opportunity for improvement for police officers to de-escalate situations like this one, and maybe ripping an umbrella from a person and macing the crowd is not the best way to do that.
Yeah, you think with all the money that we funnel into the police, they would have better training, right? Like,
well, the budget for SPD for last year, wasn't it like over $400 million or something like that?
Yeah, I think is either 400 million or is it 200 million? It's one. I know that's quite the gap, but like something like that, and
it's in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah,
it was $363 million for 2019.
I mean, they're like getting paid to hurt people, but I guess that's also what.
Well, I guess that's not their official title, but like, I feel like, but we're putting so much money into the police department in Seattle, and I guess people expect better training for what we're paying. But yeah, I don't know. I don't pretend to be like an expert on this topic, but I think that some things just seem very clear, like de-escalation's a good idea, and just for the sake of peace, you know.
Yeah, maybe if they, that's the thing though, you know, if like if you want to talk like reform for the police, a lot of their training goes into being, you know, militarized. That's how you say it, militarized, right? It would just make more sense that they already have that education, but like, I guess it's just not their priority, right? Because they're trained to just de-escalate. But I mean, that's what we're told, right? But then you know.
You mentioned to me that you think that the media in general is like this giant industrial like machine that we'll have to eventually dismantle or deal with the consequences of. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like we like the Fox News and the CNNs of society have too much power, and like the billionaire owners of those networks, they have ulterior motives that they're going to use those networks as like a way for them to accomplish those motives, and we need to get rid of, if a media company is too large, they have too much influence and we need lots of smaller ones? Or what do you think is the solution to that?
I think that's the thing. Like, there's an idea, but I think that's something that like it's a global issue. Like everybody would have to like want to be in on like, how are we going to make society where you know, everybody can thrive and not just, you know, the people at top or whatever. In order to do that, I feel like we need, like I said, education, so important.
But I mean like media companies in general, when it comes to like CHOP and how they misrepresented like what it was all about on TV, like how, like the way that I experienced what it was all about through Twitter was totally different than what Fox News told my parents about it. How do we solve for that? How do we make it so that everyone gets a more accurate depiction of what is going on in society, instead of like Fox News telling people over here this is how it is, and CNN telling people over here this is how it is, when the reality is they're both slanted in their own ways. And it's like, how do we accomplish this goal of like everyone just getting more of a truthful depiction of what is really going on?
I think we just gotta start talking to each other about it, kind of like what we're doing right now. I think that's important. That's like one of the big issues, is like not talking about it, because then now we're like, okay, so how do we like bring everybody together? How do we change things? Part of that is like being able to discuss these things in a comfortable manner, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because like not everybody is, and it's not easy for everybody to talk about this, because white people we're like faced with guilt, but like we can't be like faced with guilt, because we still stand from a place of privilege, you know, even with that guilt. And we're part of the reason why everything's upheld the way it is. So we have to like question ourselves and what we can do, and like think differently about maybe what we were taught growing up. Like, you know, like I feel like growing up, I was taught to not question a lot of things. Like, hey, this is how things are. You do as you're told. You know, I also grew up in a Mormon family.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Do you know anybody? No?
Yes. My wife's best friend's husband and his side of his family, they're all Mormon, or he's ex-Mormon. So a lot of people, they left it because of, I guess, how restrictive it was.
I'm one of those
abusive.
People. Yeah.
Abusive in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like a lot of the thinking is very like stagnant. Like you don't grow from it. And I'm not saying that all Mormons are bad people. Not at all. I just mean like the way that I grew up, it just kind of felt like I wasn't growing and I wasn't questioning myself. Like, and I think that's important for change, you know, because we change no matter what.
How did you get out of it?
So like
it's like if it's something you grew up in, I imagine it must be very difficult to like mentally escape.
Yeah, like when I was living with my parents, I love them and all, but it's just like then there's my family, and just being pressured to be, you know, the typical little white girl, you know, following the rules, getting married young, and then having kids. And I was just like, I just want to.
Mormons have a lot of kids, don't they?
They do. They do.
Not just like one kid. It's like.
No, it's like 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, on my Filipino side, we also have a lot of siblings. Like I have a total of 5. And then before my dad, my papa, he had like 8.
Wow.
Yeah. But
I have 1, and I don't know if I. I mean, 1's a lot.
1, I'm sure. I can only imagine. Wow.
Yeah.
But fulfilling, right, to be a parent.
It is. It's just, it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
But hey, you'll grow.
That's right. So we were talking earlier about CHOP and white privilege, and that's a perfect segue for another topic that I wanted to talk with you about, which is, I wrote down that the Black Lives Matter movement, they had a lot of support at CHOP and other places from white people, which is, I guess in theory, it's a good thing. Like we want everyone to get behind this movement and get behind the leaders of a movement that are advocating for Black rights. Like that is I feel like that's an objectively a good thing. But there's been a lot of criticism around maybe white people not acting as good allies to Black people, that some of the things that they do are more, I think what you mentioned to me earlier was that's more performative. And so how can we, as white people, be better allies to Black people? I found this really great article over on Vox called How to Be a Good White Ally According to Activists and Black Activists. And there's some great points in here I wanted to use as like a conversational like launching point with you. But I also just kind of wanted to hear from your perspective, like, what do you think it looks like for white people to be good allies for Black people? What does that look like to you, for you?
I feel like I've reiterated this so many times, but we as white people need to talk to other white people about what we can do. Because I think that
having the uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, like I feel like part of the problem is we try to like view it from an individualistic point of view, like, hey, how am I gonna help out, black and brown folks? But no, what we should be really asking is, how am I and other white folks around me gonna help these people? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have to involve everybody, because then you'll progress. But I feel like we just would rather do nothing and say nothing. But it would help all of us, even white folks. Like, if we help, like, brown and black folks, their freedom means ours. Because, like, we may be a part of the system, and we're thriving, right? Or at least at one way or another. At least we might feel that way. But I feel like deep down, all of us kind of feel like, I wish things could be better. And I feel like this is part of that issue. Because, we kind of just like focus on ourselves and not just like other people. But that's like, we need to help other people.
I think you're getting at something interesting, which is that, like, in America, we have this very individualistic culture, whereas, like, in some other countries, they have more of like a collectivist culture where they all see it as like they're all in it together. And in America, a lot of people are kind of like, I'm in it for myself. And so maybe it's like people just have this like apathy towards what happens to other people here. Like, oh, this other person is treated unfairly, but it's not happening to me or people around me specifically. Then it's easier. It's like out of sight, out of mind. I'll just like focus on my life. And I wish that people in America thought more collectively, that we saw each other as interconnected, and that an injustice towards somebody around us is a problem for us specifically too. That just because it's not happening to you specifically doesn't mean that you shouldn't care. Like, I don't know. I feel like this is like an ingrained toxic American like mentality though. How do we, because of individualism, like, how do we get people to care more about, racism towards black people when you have people going around being like, it doesn't affect me personally, so why should I care? I mean, I think like that might be at the root cause of maybe like, how do you get those people to have those uncomfortable conversations with their white friends and family? It's like, how do you get them to want to do that? First, you have to make them care. And I almost feel like individualism and how it's like, it's not impacting me personally, that stops them from having those conversations in the first place. Maybe that's part of why it was good to have the civil unrest, the protests coming to everyone's city and shaking things up, because then it's like, hey, it is look how it's impacting your life. It is impacting you. Look at this. So maybe that's one way, but I don't know. What do you think?
So, like, another thing with dealing with racism in our country, I think I'll use the bad apples thing again. Like, we try to separate ourselves from the issue at hand as if we can, somehow like avoid participation in this system. But like, the reality is we're in it even if we don't want to be, because that's just how things are, But I lost my train of thought.
Oh, it's okay.
ASMR. But in order to we need to get together and just like educate other people and be willing to like change and not be defensive about like what we do. And I think that's another thing that people like do, is be defensive about, like, oh, but I wasn't trying to be racist. And it's like, you can have good intentions but still be racist. Like, the whole point is it's veiled, like, people don't think it's racist because it's just like so ingrained into our society, or individualistic society, that
what's that quote? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like, it doesn't matter if you meant well, if what you're doing is causing a problem.
Yeah.
One of the biggest quotes from that article that I saw is, it said something like, you need to get clear on what being an anti-racist means. Anti-racism is about doing and not just knowing. Being an anti-racist is an action. It's a verb. It's something that it's not something that you just learn and stop. It's about how you change your behavior every day, in your community, your family, yourself, towards a more just, equitable society. Being an ally is a language, and being a co-conspirator is about doing the work. You have to, I think it's about being a co-conspirator. That's the word that they use in this article, which is like, I guess you're conspiring with Black people to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish in society. So it's like the actions that you're taking. And I think that's what we're kind of getting into right now, is like, how can white people go beyond just posting an Instagram photo that says Black Lives Matter and being like, I did my part? Like, what, there are a lot of what can white people do? One of the things that you said is have those uncomfortable conversations with their friends and family. What else can you think that they should be doing?
Well, like, we could bring Black and brown folks into the spotlight, for one. Like, say you brought, a Black person on here or a brown person. Well, you kind of did with me, but I'm very white coded, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But just hearing them out, amplifying their voices, and just like, because they already have a sort of like, well, everybody's different. But they have like an idea of like what's going on, because they're living it regardless of whether they want to or not. And we're just kind of like sitting here, some of us, just kind of not cognizant of what's happening around us. But if we just listen to them, put them up, I wouldn't say on a pedestal, because Angela Davis says it's not good to idolize people like that.
So who is Angela Davis?
She is a member of the Communist Party, or was. I think it was here in the United States. She had to leave because of her association with the Black Panther Party. But she was actually a part of the Communist Party before the Black Panther Party. And she just but they helped her earn her freedom because she was acquitted for something.
So she has this book that you're currently going through right now, right?
Yep.
Freedom is a constant struggle. So what's this book about?
It's about how a global collective, actually, like everybody getting together and realizing that any issues, like all across the board globally, like say Palestine has everything to do with what's happening here. Like
in what way?
Like, for example, I read this in the books, but she talks about how in Palestine the military there receives the same exact training as the police here in the United States, and also funding, because it's a whole big thing. But it's just like that struggle has everything to do with what's happening here and everywhere else, because like it's all interconnected somehow. Like say with trade, for example, like the United States just trades with everybody basically, or have workers in other countries. Like all these struggles here have everything to do with everything that's away from us, because overseas we don't really see what's happening. Like even when World War II, we had Pearl Harbor, but like then there's a bunch of other stuff happening overseas. Like in the Philippines, where I'm from, in the north, there's a lot of conflict, but I didn't learn that till like recently. But it all matters. Like it's all led up to this point. And I think if we learn about those things, we can finally get to like figuring out what to do to solve these issues we have. Over time. It's a gradual thing. Like it's not going to happen overnight or in 5 or 50 years.
So learning about Black authors like Angela Davis, I think this is part of the education that you can do as a white person to understand like some of the things that have happened to these Black human rights activists and what they're advocating for. And I think kind of gives you like a North Star of maybe how to help them, help the cause. But I think another author you mentioned to me was Assata Shakur.
Yes.
Which is, interestingly enough, is that Tupac's aunt? I think so, right?
Assata Shakur, actually, she was originally Joanne Chesimard. I think I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes.
But she renamed herself Assata Shakur because it felt like it resonated with her more so.
Yeah. What can you tell me about her?
She was also still is an activist today, a Black activist. She currently resides overseas.
Yeah.
And
is she in Cuba?
Oh yeah, I think she's in Cuba.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had to escape prison because she was wrongfully
I watched a video on her. It was interesting. It's basically like before police had body cameras, and so it's like there was this altercation where there's a shootout, and she said that they basically framed her for murder and threw her away for life with an all white jury with like no real evidence of, and she said it was just treated completely unfairly. And so she basically busted out of prison and left the country.
Yeah, the book is quite graphic, but I think it's good for everybody to read because, like, this is like the story that, the stories we hear about. What are we not hearing about? Like, what, like, Black people are treated so unfairly in this country and just like everywhere, and it's just like we need to do better. White people need to do better.
What do you say to like people out there that say, yeah, it used to be this way, but they're treated fairly now? What would you say to like that kind of attitude? You know what I mean? First of all, have you ever heard anyone say something like that? Sometimes I'll run into people that are like, I don't believe in systemic racism. I think that things used to be bad, but like we've made a lot of changes in this country and now things are better. And I don't know. And I hear that like that defense sometimes when I try to have those uncomfortable conversations with people. That's like the pushback I hear.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, nobody wants to like have these conversations because it's awkward and uncomfortable for them. But that's also like coming from a place of privilege, because like Black and brown people deal with this like every day. That's their lives, and like us turning the other cheek is kind of just it's part of what keeps everything going. But I think that if we call people out for like doing that, then they'll like start to think about their actions more and like what we could do and like what we could say, because like it's not always easy to just call someone out for like anything, especially racism, but it's just like it has to be done. And honestly, if we do it, there's like less consequences. Like we should be doing it because then we're less likely to get hurt for it, and maybe people will actually like start to like think outside the box, or maybe think about others, because that's another thing. Like people, like the individualistic view, like there's no empathy, apathetic towards politics, but like it's like just that's life. I think everything's political in some way or another, and I don't mean that in a way that like it trivializes anybody's struggles. I just mean it in a way that I think because we say, oh, I don't do politics, like, but we all do. We're a part of the system that just.
Yeah, it's like it's unavoidable.
Yeah, like
in some way it's gonna happen.
Exactly. So we can't like just say, oh, I don't want any part of this. Like that's so bad. It doesn't help. And people have been doing that for who knows how long. I think if I remember Black people saying 400 years, like that's a long time. And then like all over, like I'm not equating Filipino struggle with Black people's struggle, but from my perspective, which might help. My dad, he's Ilocano, which is a type of Filipino, but we're not Filipino. We're just from the Philippines. And my mom's white, so I'm mixed. And from that, I ended up having white skin. And most people perceive me as white. I didn't realize like the privilege behind that till like recently, because you think, oh, but I'm not just white, I'm mixed, but like people think I'm white. Mm-hmm. And that's like important to realize that,
to acknowledge.
Yeah, because there's nothing wrong. Like I don't it's a privilege to be perceived as white. I learned that like growing up, because my mom and dad were both treated very differently by the cops and by other people.
In what way?
Well,
have like an example? Good
example. Well, my mom's white, and she would always get off of speeding tickets. Mm-hmm. But that's nothing against her, but it's just more like. And then when it came to my dad, like the cops, like they would just assume that he was up to no good just because he's darker skinned, and I'm just like, that's so dumb. Like he's been thrown in jail before for something he didn't do, or like some lady was like, oh well, he was threatening me, and then like he ends up in like jail for like 2 months because of that. Like someone like, hey, he's harassing me, and yeah, but he wasn't. He wasn't doing anything, But that's like
so making like assumptions about him based on his skin color.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like I remember when I was younger, I went to court because I'm not going to go into the whole spiel of what happened, but basically he was framed for something he didn't do. And I remember looking at, I was like 10, I think. It was like an all-white jury and an all-white judge, white lawyers and stuff. And like it didn't even take, I don't think we were even in there for like an hour. It felt like forever though. But he got sent to prison for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, for something he didn't do, by the way.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like,
That must have had a lasting impact on how you see the justice system and how you see things not ending up being as fair as they could be.
it's why I'm very vocal about about it, because like I feel responsible because it like I shouldn't like it feel like me saying this is trivializing it, but I'm not trying to. If I was darker skinned like my dad, my life would be so different. But I'm white, and that's a privilege I'll live with, and I have to use that in order to maybe talk to other white people about this stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of like how we're talking now.
It's happening right now.
Yeah, see, we're getting there just a little bit.
Could I go through a list of some of the things this article talks about regarding like things white people could do to be better allies for black people, and then like if you want to like expand on any of them, we can. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Okay. The bullet points that I wrote down is it said that we should be trying to listen more than we speak. I think one person was talking about like when you're at a protest specifically that you should be there to like listen and learn from the leadership of the black people that are there and not try to like. I think I remember going to CHOP one time and there was this like white person with a megaphone like talking out again, and like I just kind of felt like it wasn't her place to do that. It just felt kind of awkward.
You're absolutely correct. As soon as I think one of the times I went there, as soon as I saw her, I'm like, she should not be that loud about what she's talking about. She should be handing the microphone to a black person right now.
Even if she's saying all the right things, I just feel like from an optics perspective, it just doesn't look right. Like you're supposed to be amplifying their voices, not speaking on behalf of them, I guess.
Yeah.
It felt kind of weird.
Exactly. Like that was just kind of not her. She needs to stay in her lane.
Yeah. Another point that someone made is like one of the best things that you can do as a white person if you go to a protest is to put yourself between black people and the police, because you have the privilege of knowing that there will be more action taken against them if you die than if a black person dies, which you kind of act as like a physical shield. And I remember seeing that in some of the protests is you would see like a wall of white people banding their arms together in the front lines.
Yeah.
And I think that actually did have an effect on how the police were treating the protesters, which is it's like using your privilege for good, but it's still kind of effed up like that it works that way.
Yeah. I actually remember when like this one protest video I saw, like they were at the White House and there's a bunch of, I think they were like high schoolers or something, but like this black kid, he walks over the barricade and like kneels down and puts his hands up, and then like this white girl just follows and stands in front of him, and then like the police start like moving in and she like stays there and like she holds on to him. And I noticed that instead of like attacking them, they're just like, you need to go back behind the barricade now. And I was just like, what? She just like, as soon as he walked out, she just ran right up to him as if she knew like what she could do for him. And I'm just like, we need more of that, because as a white person, like more than likely the cops aren't gonna try to murder us in cold blood or whatever. Like none of us are safe, but definitely it does help standing between them so our black and brown friends don't get hurt.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that seems to be how it is, but
yeah, it's gross, but that's our society at hand. Yeah.
Some other points that this article made around using like acting as a good ally for black people as a white person. One point is it said don't put your burden or your sadness or your fear onto black friends or black leaders, because it's not the job of them to make you feel comfortable. That you should I think there's another point on here that goes with this. It's like something like like you should never ask Black people like, how are you doing, because it's kind of bullshit. Like, they're not doing that great. Like, it'd be better to say something like, I can't imagine what you're going through, and I'm here if you need it. Instead, what we often get is this emotional outreach of, like, a white person will say, like, I'm so sad, I've been crying, I'm struggling because of what's happening to you. And it's like, you're kind of putting your own emotions above theirs in the conversation, when it's like they're the ones that could die if they protest. They're the ones that are having to live with this. And it's like, don't make it about you as the white person. Try to just be supportive. But I think maybe that's where a lot of white people initially go. It's like, we want to show them that we care. And so it's like, people, their first thought is like, let me express how this is affecting me emotionally. But I think that's kind of like, can be burdensome, I guess, to them. This is from what some of the Black activists said in this article. I thought that was interesting. It's something that I hadn't considered. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that, I don't know, and I feel like there's two ways to look at it, because in some ways it's kind of nice to know that someone cares about it enough that it does make them sad. But it's like, I guess it's like a balance, right? Like, if you make it all about yourself and how you're feeling, and then it's like kind of comes off as selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people like try to make it like about just their personal journey, but like that's their own personal journey. We have to like, see it as like, this is everybody's struggle.
Yeah.
And I think that will help people like see like instead of separating themselves from, the bad apples, like we'll start to see as, how can I, help, fix these bad apples. But the reality is we're all bad apples, because we partake in the system. But that's not like, viewing it that way isn't like a bad thing. Like,
I don't want to be a bad apple, Simon.
Like, we shouldn't feel guilty. It's just more like we have to realize that we're responsible, and it's not just like, oh, it's just these bad people that are responsible. It's everybody's responsibility.
That's a great segue into this next point. It says that white people should get past the shame and the guilt that they're carrying. That white people who are alive today, we did not necessarily create racism, and we didn't choose to live in a white supremacist country. We didn't choose to exist in a world that we do today, but we can choose to admit that we benefit from racism and acknowledge that we have the power to change the conditions. And it's better to like think that way than to just walk around feeling shame and guilt. Like, how can you be productive about the situation?
Like, instead of feeling shame or guilt, because that comes from a place of privilege, we need to like somehow like use that as energy to like work towards a more progressive society, asking ourselves questions that we may not usually ask ourselves, because then we'll get to it, right? Because I feel like some people are okay with the status quo or what have you, but we need to bring everybody in. We need to make sure everybody's thriving and is fed, has housing, whatever, bare necessities.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're getting into like, we could be using our privilege to advocate for our tax dollars to be used in a way that benefits people who need help. And yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
What else is this? This article says that we should be giving, as white people, we could be giving more of our time and our talent to Black-led organizations or Black leaders that are doing a lot of this frontline work in the area. You could, donate. If you don't want to do it yourself, you can donate money to them, to their groups. Join local. There's a local anti-racist group, apparently called Surge, or Showing Up for Racial Justice. Let me show this.
Oh, I have never heard about this.
And apparently there's chapters in each city.
Oh, okay.
I bet there's probably one in Seattle.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, so this is a great way for white people to get more involved. So check that out if you're interested. This is if you're raising kids, you should talk to them about race right now and organize parents at your school to look at the curriculum of what's being taught about Black history. And I think it's like there is something to be said about like whatever we program to the minds of our children, that becomes like the adults of tomorrow. And like I think it's important to make sure that they know about how things have happened, transpired in the past, and how we're working to do things better now. And yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to like hear everybody's perspective on it, because I feel like did you know that Black and brown folks actually have like, you know how we have the talk about sex? Well, they have a talk about like, you know, racism and stuff to their kids, like at least at one point, whether they experience it or not. And I thought when I read that, I was like, oh wow, because like my parents never taught me about that. But
You mean they have a talk about how to interact with the police?
to how to interact with the police, how to, you know, how to live without being discriminated against, or but like, you know, that's just you know, to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're still discriminated against, because you know that's the cops, and then the tree and the bad apples upholding everything.
Yeah. We talked about using privilege in a way where you can, you know, help Black people with your privilege. This article said that get clear about where money is going in your community. Like, know how much money is going to the police in your area. Know how much like tax dollars is going towards other programs like social services, and be more involved in pressuring elected officials on reallocating funds to make sure that there are alternatives to sending police officers to every situation, right? That's kind of like the national conversation that we're having in this country is, should police be showing up for every situation? Like, oh, it's someone's addicted to drugs. Oh, someone's homeless. Do we send an armed police officer with a gun to that situation? Like what happened in Atlanta where like the guy was passed out drunk in the drive-through. Do you remember that? And then like they escalated it to where they ended up shooting the guy. And I just think that, what if they had sent like a social worker there to just like talk to him and make sure he got home safe and sobered up? Like, he'd still be here. That guy didn't have to get shot, you know? And I just don't know if it's appropriate to always send a police officer with a gun to every situation. Maybe we can reallocate some of their funding to have other professionals in different areas to handle different things. Like, it seems like it's asking too much of police officers to ask them to like deal with every situation, right? Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, like we should, instead of, you know, calling the cops on maybe a homeless person who might be having, I don't know, some issues, we should use mental health specialists to do that instead of just calling the cops. Because the cops, you know, they're not going to de-escalate it. They're going to just either throw this guy in prison or something worse, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and you know, these people aren't necessarily always violent either, you know? Like, sometimes they're just maybe homeless and just hanging out, and then they're just like, oh, you know, we could just throw them in jail or whatever the cop's feeling. Because, you know, every cop's different. They're not, well, I mean, they're all bad by association, but like, they're not, you know, not all of them are gonna like start.
You mean they're
something.
bad in the sense that they're participating in a system that
Yes.
needs reform?
Yes, absolutely. But like, if they were trained to deal with these people and not like just, you know, either shoot to kill or just drag them to jail, like if they were able to like talk someone out of like a bad situation, like say they were suicidal, like if they were able to just be there for them, but they don't have that training, you know. A mental health specialist has that training.
Mm-hmm.
But
is it too tall of an order to expect them to have training for everything? Like, one person cannot be great at handling every type of situation. Like, it just doesn't seem reasonable. Like, I personally think that if we have well-trained police officers and we reserve them for situations where we genuinely need their intervention, I support that. But I think, like, I don't think that we need to send. I think that we need trained professionals to deal with unique issues and not have a one size fits all person that deals with everything, you know?
Absolutely. And then you probably have less of those situations that do escalate into something bad. Like, I mean, have you been downtown, right? And you have you seen any of that happen around here? I'm sure.
Like what?
Well, just where the cops will like respond to a situation of someone either acting erratic or they might need some help, and it's someone who's homeless on the street, and they just, it's probably not easy, like knowing what to do in that situation, but it's more like we shouldn't be calling them. Like there should be like a number we call to help people that might need some special help, like, but then there's also, we have to fund that, and then we have to get people on board with that, which is not impossible. I think that's like an idea we still have to ingrain into some people's heads. Like,
yeah, well, I think it's kind of sad that it's like it seems like there's more people on board with funding police officers to throw homeless people with mental disorders or drug or substance abuse problems in prison than they'd rather fund that than spend even less money funding social services that would help rehabilitate them and get them back into being a functioning member of society. Like, it just seems like our priorities are so messed up, Like, I see the arguments that a lot of Republicans make about, like, they don't think it's fair that their tax dollars should have to fund, say, like, building housing for the homeless. And it's like, do you realize that you're paying more money putting them all in jail and paying for their life being imprisoned for what's their crime, being mentally ill or having a drug or substance abuse issue because they're homeless and they're depressed or whatever. And it's like, wouldn't it be better to spend less money than we're paying for them to keep them in prison to house them and train them and rehabilitate them so they can get back to being a happy, thriving member of the country? It's like, what's a better investment of our tax dollars? And it seems like some people just don't seem to get it. I don't know. It's really kind of depressing when I think about it.
Yeah, see, like there's the prison industrial complex, which is apparently really profitable since they make prisoners, work for like pennies.
It's like slavery 2.0.
Exactly.
Because it's like you arrest somebody for something and then you make them work for 20 cents an hour. It's like, it's basically slavery.
Yeah, it's modern day slavery, and even in the Constitution it says like you're free unless you committed a crime, but then we jail people even if they didn't commit a crime. So it's just like, what's the idea behind all of this? Like, why are we really doing this? And if we ask those questions, then we can be like, oh, like maybe people would think about it a little more, aside from being apathetic and being like, it's not my issue, what do I care? Because it will matter. In the end, it does matter. It all affects all of us, And if we start thinking like that instead of just thinking about, oh, how is this going to affect me? Then, things might be different. But like, just white people especially just turn the other cheek, or, try to separate themselves from white people that might be maliciously racist. But then we have to remember that that's like, we can just do that and we'd be fine. But then black and brown people are still living and being discriminated against. And we need to focus on how we can make this society work for them as well as it works for us.
Yeah, definitely. Look at this pie graph. It says how many people are locked up in the United States. The U.S. locks up more people per capita than any other nation in the world at a staggering rate of 698 people per 100,000. Wow. Yeah,
that prison industrial complex is quite profitable, ain't it? But it's just like, it's so.
I wonder what effect making cannabis legal on a federal level would impact the ability to fill private prisons, right? Like, because my understanding is that a large percentage of people that end up in prison are there for non-violent drug offenses, and mainly for like possession of cannabis, right? It's like, for real, like it's so weird to live in a state where it's completely legal and then you go like across the border somewhere else to a different state and people are still going to jail for a while for such a harmless substance. It's such a weird, I don't know. Our laws seem so arbitrary. What really gets me going is like how like you have like alcohol and tobacco, which are like medically and scientifically like demonstrated to be very harmful for us. And then it's like that, I guess, makes a little bit more sense that the government's trying to protect us. But then you have some things that have like medicinal value, like cannabis or psilocybin,
Mm-hmm.
and these substances are treated like they're demonized. They're treated like they're really harmful, but they're not. And I don't know. It kind of depresses me to see what our government wants us to stay away from and what our government wants us to participate in. Like, oh, if it's harmful, go right ahead, and if it's helpful to you in some ways, then it's like it's almost like they don't want us to. I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective. Why do you think that our government still hasn't allowed like marijuana to be legal on a federal level?
I think it's because like drugs are still overall just like stigmatized, like cannabis even. Like
But not all drugs, though, right? Like alcohol is a drug, and tobacco is a drug, and those drugs seem to be so socially acceptable, even though they're so deadly. So, like, what is it about? Like, some are, you know?
well, here's a perspective that might help. I have you heard about that? Was it Jay Morgan had like a bunch of like cocaine on their ships, but no one ever said anything about it. There was like a news article about it, and then like no one said anything. I didn't hear about it any other time.
Jay Morgan.
J.P. Morgan, I think, the bank.
Uh huh.
That's a bank, right? Yeah, they had like a bunch of cocaine on one of their ships, but then no one, like, I didn't see it anywhere else. But yeah, I
That's
think that might be it. But see, also, if we're being honest, cocaine is typically rich
on
person drug.
20 tons.
Like, yeah,
That's not an accident.
exactly, but then it's just like, oh, well, my coke habit is, don't worry about that. Worry about, people smoking cannabis or, meth. Like, we're focused.
And then you get into like the laws of the punishment for getting caught with cocaine versus crack were totally different because cocaine is a white drug and crack was a black drug historically. And they like carried different prison sentences, and they're like chemically basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like stuff like that was really disheartening to read about when I was in college. Yeah.
Like, there's even this, I believe it was New York as well, but there was this white couple who had a baby, and like they were having a coke party, I believe. It was something like that, but the baby somehow got a hold of it, and the baby died.
Oh
but,
my God.
But instead of going to prison, I think they got like a shorter prison sentence. And I was just like, but your baby died because of your coke habit. That's bad. But
Yeah.
like, that's one of the things with like privilege, too, because like they didn't. I mean, if a black person did that or a brown person did that, they would be thrown in prison for probably life. Like, they would find any sort of reason to be like, kind of like we're trying to like criminalize certain people. And like, because I think drugs are just a part of like the human experience. I'm not saying everybody does them, but like it's just part of the human experience, and we haven't really come to terms with that yet. So we criminalize certain drugs and not other
When you say they're
drugs.
part of the human experience, what do you mean by that? Like, from my interpretation of that is like, we are alive. There are things around us that can make us feel and think certain ways, and it's like just curiosity, wanting to understand what is out there and interact with what is out there. And I mean, obviously, if something's going to kill us, then it's helpful to have a government or some kind of protecting body say like, hey, like this thing, if you do this thing, it could kill you, like be careful. Like, I appreciate that. What I don't appreciate is like, oh, this is going to make you feel more enlightened, or this is going to help you think about things in a different perspective. And it's like then having a government saying like, I don't like the idea of you having thoughts. I don't want you to think differently. I don't want you to be your mind to be expanded. I'm going to make you think that these are all just as harmful as things that could kill you. Like, I don't like that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
There's a theory about humans developing consciousness, and one of the theory is that humans found, psilocybin mushrooms, and they just took them, and I don't know the story because that was probably so long ago, because mushrooms have been around almost as long as trees have been around. So it's like interesting how like that experience might have developed into what history has shown and what is happening today.
Well,
Like,
there's the stoned ape theory, which is that I guess that apes consumed psychedelic mushrooms and that kind of influenced how we evolved the way that we did. I mean, it's a theory, but it's something definitely worth like checking out, reading about. It's interesting to me.
yeah, I think that's probably like maybe we don't know the whole story, but that makes you wonder, like, if we're not allowed to do these legally, then this is like, but why? This mushrooms, like, and trees and all that just grow everywhere. Cannabis just, it grows everywhere. Like, are you just going to outlaw something that just grows around us? Like, how are you going to really do that?
And then you have a lot of people who are religious, right? That believe in God. And then it's like, how do you believe in God and simultaneously ban its creation, right? Like, if you believe that God created these plants, then you believe that these plants were created by God intentionally. And then to ban them is to say that you don't want people to interact with what God has created for us. I think that's a strange thing too.
Yeah.
It seems to be a very religious people that also simultaneously don't want people to have those experiences. I don't know. It's confusing to me.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean,
I feel like we've deviated like really far away from like from being good white allies, but I don't know. It's an interesting conversation that I feel like we both are passionate about.
it's okay. It all matters. Us talking about, like, it all matters,
Yeah.
all leading up to the same thing.
Yeah. I think something that you mentioned earlier is that, it took 4 months for you to receive your unemployment. I had
Yeah.
that happen to several of my friends. I mean, they eventually got a big payout, which is good. But until that happened, like, a lot of people were just hung out high and dry. And I was reading that one way that we can be good white allies for Black people is that we should be advocating more that our tax dollars be used to ensure the safety of people that it's affecting most in the midst of this pandemic, right? Like, it's hitting Black and brown communities worse than others. And meanwhile, we see how our tax dollars are used to brutalize people. Like, you see just in Seattle, like we have $400 million a year to give to police officers. Then you look at things like, what has our federal government done to help people during this pandemic? It's like, okay, they gave everyone a $1,200 check one time back in April or May, and that was it. Meanwhile, you look at like what does Canada do for their people? They're receiving like $2,000 a week. It's like just a night and day difference. I don't know. It just seems like the government could be doing more, and maybe as white people we can be trying to advocate more for our government to be helping communities that are being impacted the most from things like a pandemic. Let's see. This says it says that the government doesn't help us economically in a significant way. They don't help us with healthcare. They don't help us with our rent. They don't help us with mortgages. I guess they've done a moratorium where like you don't have to pay it now, so they're not going to kick you out of your place if you can't pay rent. But it's just building up. And so what? So after everyone gets their vaccine next year, everyone's going to be in debt $20,000 in back pay for their apartment. Like, that's going to be a nightmare, But unemployment is increasing, and it says this is a good point. This article said, we have no protective personal equipment for our frontline healthcare workers, but we have Avenger-level body armor for police officers to brutalize protesters.
Yeah, there's that, that we need to redistribute our wealth and like change our priorities, because obviously the priorities, the military and the cops, right? But then it's just like, what if we use some of that money to go into like mental health services or food for people, housing for people, so there wouldn't be like, say homeless people on the streets. Like, they would have housing. Like, even in Utah they have this thing where they house all homeless people, and it's cheaper than not leaving them out on the streets
Or imprisoning them.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know if it's like how good it is because I'm just reading from the outside in, but like I'm assuming it's way better than what we have here, which is like we just do homeless sweeps on the streets. Like we need to put people in housing. I mean, there's so many empty houses everywhere. Even in my neighborhood, there's empty houses. It's just like why are there people on the streets but houses ready to house someone? You
Yeah.
know?
I imagine, I'm not a Christian personally, but I imagine like as a Christian person, if Jesus came back today and he was like, guys, what the F? You have a homeless epidemic with tons of empty houses and you haven't figured it out. Like, what is wrong with you? I think Jesus would be pissed.
Yeah, he fed the poor. He fed poor people, and he was supposed to like I don't know. Everybody acts like they're a saint, but they don't do anything like Jesus did. You know what I mean?
It's greed, right? I mean, what is it? What is it? It's people care more about themselves and looking out for themselves, and they don't want to take care of other people.
Maybe there's like this idea we have that if we don't take care of ourselves, then ultimately we will suffer and fail or whatever else.
Or
But
by taking care of other people, it somehow will negatively impact us.
yes, and like it's fair that we want to focus on some of our own things, like but then if we collectively work together, we could accomplish way more. Because two is better than one, three is a party, four is a crowd, whatever have you.
Yeah.
It's much more powerful than just one person making these decisions or saying these things,
And I think younger generations understand that more. And I think that it's like as things are progressing, I'm hoping that things are starting to become more like that. It's just takes time it takes more time to see the kind of change we would like overnight, and it seems like it's taking more time than it's slow.
Yeah, I think over time, like people start to like really questioning things how they are, and then like we're gonna like nothing's really like changed, or it's like been a slow change, right? Like say with minimum wage, for example, like I don't think that's changed much within 10 years, if I remember right. Like it's from seven to no, I think it's like $7, right? 7, 8 for federal, not like state, obviously, because we're pretty high up there.
The minimum wage for federal is $7.25 an hour.
Like, and then it was like that. How many years ago? 10. Like, why is it still $7? I can't live off that.
Let's look at the history of it. Let's see.
Like,
there's probably a chart on Google Images we can pull up. Here we go.
And like to be honest, $18, which is what I used to make being a barista, is not enough to live in Seattle either. Like if I didn't have my husband, I'd probably be fucked. But it's just and then like
so wait, so adjusted. Okay, so let's look at the adjusted minimum wage. That's the number that's important.
Why is it?
So why is what?
Like so unadjusted, adjusted, like what do they mean by that?
Like inflation.
Oh, okay.
So the blue line is what's important. The orange line is not useful information. But so like it looks like in 1970 is the best people who earned minimum wage had it because it's like their buying power went further. So 1970 was the strongest. It was like basically like regardless of how much the money actually was, like they're saying, okay, in 1970 the minimum wage was like less than $2 money wise, but its purchasing power was compared to today, it's more like almost 12. So they're saying as we move to 2020, it's kind of aligned where this is where we are today. So $7.25, is that the minimum wage?
$7.25, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty weak sauce.
It is pretty weak sauce. Like I said, even 18 an hour here in Seattle is not enough for just one person to live off of. Like I live with my husband, so we're fine. But like I think they said it was like 25 an hour in Seattle is what one person needs to like survive comfortably. I don't know if that's true though, because I've never made that much. But I assume it's easier.
Yeah, I mean it helps, I guess, but How much is the question?
Yeah, I think even I heard that techies even have issues living here, but also I don't know how lavishly they're living. If they are, I'm just assuming because they have more money than me. But like
Well, even people who have houses are dealing with this concept of being house poor, where you signed up for a mortgage back when things were a lot better in the economy and with your job, and then it's like maybe people have maybe one person lost their job, maybe both people lost their job, or maybe they're getting less hours or whatever the case, and now it's like maybe they can pay their mortgage, but now they have hardly any money left over for anything else. And so there's this
oh
concept of being house poor, where it's like you've taken on this debt to pay for your mortgage, but then like it's hard to have money for other things. And I don't know, that's happening to a lot of people too.
here in Seattle.
Well, everywhere, I would imagine.
Well, oh, shoot.
I mean, the more expensive the place, I mean, probably the worse it is. But
Yeah, that's. I'm assuming it's more expensive because it's a lot to clean up. Is that why? I wouldn't know. I've never bought a house. I wish. But
I think it's just supply and demand. Like the more people want to live in a certain area, the more the cost of living seems to go up. Like in Seattle, I feel like Amazon moved to downtown Seattle, and then lots of people wanted to work there, and then those people bought up all the property, and then it's like more people want to work there, and then that causes the cost of housing in those areas to be in more demand, which causes the price to go up, and it's just like it's just a messy situation. And then people are like, hey, Jeff Bezos, maybe you should pay more in taxes to help fix the problem that your company kind of helped contribute. And he's like, I create jobs, so why should I?
yeah, and I heard he doesn't even pay taxes either. I'm like, how does he have that much money but he doesn't pay taxes?
Well, he pays tax. This is the rich person argument. It's the same argument I think Trump is making right now. Is that he pays taxes in so many other ways that maybe he shouldn't have to pay federal income taxes. So it's that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
But
I wanted to talk to you about COVID, and something that you had mentioned to me is that COVID has caused a lot of us to kind of feel separate from other people, and that it's having a negative impact on our mental health. That we're told that we need to socially distance to be safe and to keep other people safe, but that it's not. There's also our mental health that we need to think about, and you wanted to touch on music and how that can be a way that can bring us all together in the new normal that we're all experiencing. Like, what did you mean by that when you brought that up?
So one of the things I did at the beginning of quarantine, like March, April, I remember Insomniac was like releasing a lot of like live streams of artists, and like in place of any of the events that they were going to throw in person at like a festival, and then they had to cancel because COVID. But it seems like people can like still get together at that, like maybe have a watch party or something, and then like watch the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
And like
digitally, like online, they have a watch party.
Yeah, like I think even Facebook, you can like start a watch party, but like like
create a room.
Yeah, create a room, and I don't know, you could probably do that with Zoom or anything really, but it's not the same as in person. But like another thing we have to remember in this new normal is that like we're gonna have to distance just for till I don't know, things get better, whatever happens. But it's a good alternative too, because like you're at home, you're in the safety of your home, but you're not like risking infection by going out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also there's that in person, like that feel to it, like you're hanging out with people, you're dancing with them, you're just getting high off of the vibes there at the festival. And like it's just so different when you're just live streaming something. But I think that can like help us cope. Like, I heard about drive-in raves. I'm sure you have too.
I have.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad idea either. But I'm like, for me personally, like since I have asthma, like I'm very much like I don't think I'm gonna do that. Like I want to, but it's not safe for people like me. Like what if I get COVID because I went to a festival? Like whose fault is that? Mine. But like I'm not saying I hope people get COVID. It's more like
it looks fun though.
It does look fun.
Wait, hold on. Wait, let me show. Like,
Ooh. Nostalgia.
yeah.
Oh, that's so
But
pretty.
it looks like they're in their car.
Wait, is that the one that happened, I think, in Utah?
I don't know.
I know there was a drive-in rave at Utah, I believe, or
Yeah.
Arizona that everybody went to.
I mean, I think it'd be relatively safe if you went to something like this and stayed in your car and you only went with people in your household. The danger here, I think, is that this encourages getting a group of your friends together and getting in a car together, right?
Yeah.
And then what does that mean? It's like you're all cross-contaminating, right? So
And then maybe you're so like, oh, I love this. You get out of the car and you start dancing, you start hanging out with other people, which
Yes.
isn't bad, but then it's bad because you're risking infection.
well,
you
and
know?
then plus those types of events tend to bring drugs and alcohol into the mix, and then you start making bad decisions like, F COVID, I hate COVID, I'm just going to hang out with people, I don't care, and it's like you're basing that on, an impaired mind, I think.
Yeah, there's that like apathy towards like other people's like health, but like that's another thing we have to confront. Like there's also a lot of, I wouldn't say division. It's more like people like white people being like, I'm not a part of this, so I don't want to deal with it. It's more like we don't call those people out. Like everybody wants. I think all of us want to go back to festivals, right? But we have to like think logically here. Like we need to keep each other safe so we can do that again, so we can freely go out and enjoy a festival, hang out with over 100,000 people if you're at EDC or something, because that's just like, it's just like overall not a good idea. You're pulling people into the same place, and what you're using hand sanitizer as you're washing your hands or whatever. Just like we have to change like how we attend these things or view them, at least, because I think we're just stuck on how they used to be, but like this is a new normal.
Yeah. So how do you think it will be post-vaccine? Like, say we get a vaccine the beginning of next year, which I hope happens. Do you think that live music will go back to normal, or do you think that it's still going to be different? I guess how are you going to know who got the vaccine and who didn't, I don't know. Are they going to make you fill out a form or I don't know.
Yeah, that's another thing. And also like there's people that have like just said I'm not going to get it. And like I don't blame those people, cuz like it's kind of scary that they're rushing things, and that makes me uncomfortable getting it. I'm not saying I wouldn't get it. It's just more like I don't blame them for being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
If they're rushing it. Like, why are you rushing a vaccine? Like,
well, it's pretty obvious why they're rushing it, though,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we want things to go back to normal.
True, but I feel like what humans need to understand, I'm just saying, like, everybody needs to understand that, like, I think, like, things might fundamentally change regardless of whether we want to or not. Like, they already have. Like, everywhere you go, there's, like, a face shield attached to every single register or anything. Like, you can't, and you can't touch people, and that's not, I'm not saying that,
I just went to a restaurant where, like, every table had, like, a shield between each table. Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, and that's actually good. It would help us in the long run overall. Like we should be like more hygienic. Like why haven't people been doing this stuff before, to be honest? Like even just like good hygiene, like washing your hands. Like we have to tell people to wash their hands. Like we should have been doing this in general. Like
oh my god, I was trying to find you an example of what it looked like and I accidentally found this instead.
oh my god. Like okay. I think that works, but I feel like there's a lot.
That's a little excessive. I think that's too far. Come on.
Oh my god. I just imagine pictures and like taking pictures in a restaurant, and you just like surrounded by this giant hanging face shield.
This is what the place I had was more like. It was more. Oh wait, no, it's not gonna. It was more like. It was more like this. Like, why is that so small?
Oh, nice.
But you see, like, just a little divider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't we do that before? That really helps out with like germs and everything, just in general. Like,
it'll probably reduce how many people get the flu too.
Yeah. Like
hopefully those numbers will go down this winter.
I guess we'll see, right? But then also there's like, is it COVID or is it the flu? Is it both?
Dude, anxiety med prescriptions are going to be through the roof this year.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's mental and physical health has been kind of like deteriorating, like from all this, because we're isolated, or if we're working in the public and we don't want to like get COVID. Like there's that. I think that it's a fear everybody has, like, am I gonna get COVID kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
I'm personally not as worried about getting it myself, but more so being an asymptomatic vector to someone I care about that could more impact. So that's why I'm trying to personally be more careful about it.
yeah, I think I heard, well, it might be wrong, but I read somewhere that like the, because we're still learning about COVID, but like apparently 60% like are asymptomatic. Like that's as far as we know. It might not, it might be more, it might be less. Because
So you're saying like we could have already had it and then just never exhibited any symptoms,
well,
potentially.
possibly. Well, I got sick like about in February. I got sick in February, and it was like unexplained. The doctors told me it was a sinus infection, but I've never been so sick in my life, and I was just like bedridden for 2 weeks, and like I was like, am I ever gonna get better? But like I recovered, and I mean, it might have just been a sinus infection, but it was like different. Like I felt different. Like this is a different kind of flu or something. But saying that, maybe I didn't have COVID. It might have just been a sinus infection. But then there's like, what if there's a lot of other people with that same story? Like, I got sick. I don't know what it was, but I'm better now. Like, who knows,
Yeah.
But I tested negative, so I don't know. I don't think. But then I heard that the tests aren't always accurate either. So there's that, like, you're not sure,
There's a lot of doubt in a lot of areas. I just wash your hands, wear a mask, practice social distancing. Just do what you can. Take things that help boost your immune system so you can fight it off if you get it. I mean, what else can you do?
Exactly, because that's the best we can do right now.
Yeah. But back to the original topic of like how music can help us connect and kind of help us with our mental health during COVID. You mentioned that there are some Black musicians that people should look into. I think one of them was Frankie Knuckles. Another one was Nina Simone. Do you want to talk about either of them?
From what I understand, Frankie Knuckles was invented house music, and I watched a mini documentary on him, and it's
called Unsung.
Yeah, Unsung. I think I sent that to you.
Yeah, I checked it out.
Yeah, did you like it?
I had no idea of the origin of the term house music. That they said in the documentary that it was from the term warehouse. It used to be called warehouse music because this guy was creating music in a warehouse, and then it was a different genre that no one had heard of, and then they were making copies on tapes and handing the tapes around Chicago, and people were saying like, what is that? What kind of music is that? That's warehouse music. They're making it in the warehouse. And then that slowly got shortened down to the term house. I'm like, oh, it's just fun to hear like the origin stories of where like things come from. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and it just like explains like, festivals today, because now everybody's into EDM, right? Like everybody wants to go to a festival, and I think that's pretty cool that we got to learn like where that all came from, because I think what we also forget to do is like recognize these people, because I think recently Frankie Knuckles passed away, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Frankie Knuckles. But like I didn't hear about him till like I sought out that information, and I was just like so sad, because like he is so good. Like I would be so happy to see him live, if only,
So check out Frankie Knuckles. That's a great artist to check out. And then another artist that you had mentioned to me is Nina Simone. So what can you tell me about her?
From my understanding is Nina Simone was the original blues singer.
She's known as the High Priestess of Soul, apparently.
So the creation of soul music. Now that's beautiful.
And there's a documentary about her, right, on Netflix.
Yeah, What Happened, Miss Simone. And I think what really like
is that like asking the general public the question, or is it asking her? I wonder, like, what does that mean?
So her daughter directed the documentary, and I think that's like maybe her asking her mother like what happened, because like
tell me about it. Yeah,
like so Nina Simone just like starts out just doing music because she's trying to make a living, but then she found like a way to like make it more personal, and then she turned into an activist, And I think that's what, like, I haven't heard of Nina Simone till I looked up that Netflix documentary. And
Yeah.
like,
I had not heard of her like specifically, but I had heard her sing certain songs. Like if you go on YouTube and type in, let's see,
Porgy.
Nina Simone. Like I've heard her sing "Feeling Good" before, but I didn't know it was her singing it. Things like that. Like she's got some big hits that she's sang, and it's just like I never realized it was her who sang it. But but you've seen this documentary. I have too, but you recommend people check this out. It's part of the Black Lives Matter collection, apparently.
Absolutely. We need to start listening to Black women more. Please amplify their voices.
There you go.
I mean,
upvote. Just did it. And then you also sent me this interesting clip of how music has the ability to be very powerful. It was like this guy who had Alzheimer's, and they were playing it. Tell me about this.
so he apparently wasn't very responsive to anybody till like after he started listening. They like put in like headphones and started playing music that he listened to when he was younger, and like he just came alive. Like look at that. He just like he's having a good time, and he's like talking.
And I think context wise, like before the music, like they would ask him questions about himself and he couldn't answer any of them.
Yeah, he was just very like not really like responding, and he's so responsive after music, and then even after like he was talking to them as if he
Didn't have Alzheimer's.
Yeah, like totally different.
I think what I got from this is like they would use the music to trigger. They'd play a song and then they'd ask him questions about the song, about like where was he when he heard the song, and they would be able to pull out memories from him around the song itself, and it's almost like the song was the anchor to get him to start remembering.
Yeah, like I think I don't know, maybe it does something for our brains that where we can just somehow like connect the dots so much easier, or maybe we just like you associate a song with a memory, right? And
Yeah.
I think everybody does that, and I think that's
why some people have like songs they can never listen to again because they associate it with like a lover and a breakup. They're like, oh, I hate that song.
I totally feel. I think we all like have had that a few songs, or that one song where like, yeah, I'm not listening to it anymore.
Yeah.
But that's also another thing. Like that's how powerful music is. Like
yeah.
Just like that, our mood changes, either good or bad. Like wow, that's beautiful, and like. Then you have people who can make music, and then everybody's like, dancing to it. Like, that is part of what can bring people together, is like making music and just like bringing people together because they like the same music. But I guess we have to do it in a socially distant way now because, COVID.
Yeah. Hopefully not for too much longer. Hopefully we'll have some solutions that'll show up in 2021 that'll make things so we can be around people again more.
Yeah, hopefully in the next year or two, or 5. I don't know. What do you think? How long is it going to be?
I think that we will have a vaccine that people will begin taking the beginning of next year. I think there will be some people that will be afraid to take it. I think that the people that are brave enough to take it first will be like the testers of it, and then the more I think the longer we go where we see that there are not negative side effects from the people who did take it, more people will get on board with taking it, and I think then we'll have more of an immune society, and it'll help reduce the appearance of the virus, and then I think things will slowly start to ramp up back to normal. And I think it'll probably take the first half of 2021 before we start to see things really start to feel a little different. But at least we have somewhat of a roadmap of how it'll go back to normal, normalish.
Normalish. But what about the anti-vaxxers though that won't take it at all?
Well, I mean, but there's 400 million people in the country. I think what's important to focus on is what will most people do.
True. Yeah, but then we gotta, I guess in a way, to include everybody in on the same page. We would have to figure out like how we can convince those people that might not take it, like why it would be in their best interest as well as anybody else's to just, take it.
This is just like how we started this interview with, which is how do you get people to be motivated to get involved with local elections? How is it in their best interest to get involved in local elections? Like you always have to find ways to make it so that it's like, what is in it for you to get people to be motivated to want to do it?
Absolutely. Connect the dots.
Yeah.
It's all part of the big same stew. We're all part of it.
Same stew. Simon, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you and discussing all these interesting topics. I wanted to give you the final word, though. If there's anything you'd like to say to our viewers before we go, the floor is yours. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Black Lives Matter, yo.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show, and we'll see you in the next one.
Have a good one. That's like a